In my 60s now, I never expected to face the kind of rejection that would come from my own son, especially after everything I'd done for him. I never thought it would happen to me, not at this stage of my life. After all these years of working hard to support my family, of sacrificing so much, I thought I had earned the respect, the love, the care of those I held dear, but it wasn't to be. No, the betrayal I faced came from the one person I least expected, my son, Adam. I had worked for over 40 years in a factory. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I wasn't the kind of man who needed much, just a roof over my head and food on the table. My wife, Linda, and I had raised Adam with all the love and care we could provide. We taught him right from wrong, and more importantly, we taught him the value of hard work. But then came the day when it all fell apart. The factory I worked at had been a part of the town's fabric for generations. Everyone knew someone who worked there. It wasn't just a job, it was a community, a place where you could trust your coworkers, where you built relationships over decades. But the world was changing, and slowly but surely, the factory started to fall apart. The company was losing money, and management was making decisions that were difficult to swallow. They started cutting costs, downsizing. It didn't take long before the axe fell, and I, along with several others, was let go. It wasn't just a job loss, it was an identity loss. For the first time in my life, I felt completely useless. I had always been proud of what I did, proud to come home every day and tell Linda how my day went. I had worked hard for everything we had, and suddenly, it felt like everything I had worked for had been erased in an instant. I didn't know how to tell Linda. I didn't know how to face Adam. I had always been the one to provide, the one to lead by example, and now I was nothing more than an old man with no place to go. The first few days were a blur. I didn't leave the house much, just sat there on the couch, thinking. Linda did her best to comfort me, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together when I couldn't, but I could see the strain this was putting on her as well. She had never expected to be in this position either. Then came the conversation with Adam. I had been trying to avoid it. I didn't want to burden him with my failure, but Adam had always been my pride. We had a close relationship, at least. I thought we did. We would spend hours talking about everything under the sun, and I was always there for him when he needed advice or just someone to listen. I thought he understood me, respected me, but the day came when he asked me what I was going to do next, and I had no answer. I'm still figuring it out, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's just going to take some time to get back on my feet. He looked at me with a kind of disappointment in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Dad, you're not getting any younger. You've been working there your whole life, and now you don't have anything to show for it. Don't you think it's time to move on? You're holding Mum back. You're holding yourself back. His words stung like nothing I had ever felt. I had always tried to shield him from the struggles of life, but now, it was like he was seeing me through a different lens. He wasn't the little boy who looked up to me anymore. He was a grown man, and he saw the world in a way I didn't understand. I'm trying, Adam, I said quietly. I'm trying to figure out what comes next, but it's hard. Adam didn't seem to hear me. Instead, he shook his head, almost as if he were disappointed in me. You can't just keep sitting around. You need to get your act together. You're not a kid anymore, Dad. You need to start thinking about the future. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent my life working, trying to build something for my family, and now my own son was telling me I wasn't enough, that I wasn't doing enough. I had always been the one who held it all together, and now, I was the one falling apart. I tried to keep the emotion out of my voice. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I'm still your father. But Adam wasn't hearing me. He had already made up his mind. I don't know what to say, Dad. You've had your chance. Now it's time to face reality. I can't keep bailing you out. Mom's already doing enough. The words were harsh, and they cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I had always been the one to protect him, to take care of him, and now, it felt like he was pushing me aside. I didn't know what to say after that. I stood there, stunned, as Adam turned away and walked out of the room. I stood frozen, feeling the weight of his rejection crash down on me. This wasn't how I imagined things would go. My son, the one I had raised with all my love and effort, had just rejected me. I don't know how long I stood there, but I knew one thing. Something had changed, forever. The more I tried to reach out to Adam, the more distant he became. And as much as I tried to explain myself, it felt like the rift was growing wider. After that day, I tried to shake off the conversation. I told myself that maybe Adam was just frustrated, that he didn't mean what he had said. After all, he had always been a good kid. He'd always respected me, looked up to me. But that moment, that one moment where he dismissed me, pushed me away, stayed with me, it gnawed at me, eating away at any remnants of pride I had left. The next few days, I tried to act normal. I went out to the local cafe in the mornings, just to get out of the house. Linda was busy with her own work around the house, and I couldn't stand the idea of sitting around doing nothing. But everywhere I went, I felt this cloud hanging over me. The weight of Adam's words lingered in my mind, as if they were echoing through my thoughts every minute of the day. I had always prided myself on being a good father. I worked hard, provided for my family, and when Adam needed advice, I was always there. But what did it all mean now? Adam was an adult, and I thought I had prepared him for the world. But now, it felt like he had already moved on, like he had already cast me aside. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was becoming irrelevant in his life. I decided to reach out to him again. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, trying to sound casual. "Hey, Adam, it's Dad. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Maybe we could grab a drink or something this weekend. Let me know when you're free." But as the days went by and I heard nothing back, I began to feel a deeper sense of loss. My son, the one I had spent so many years raising, was slipping away from me, and I couldn't understand why. A week later, I saw him at the grocery store. I was walking down the aisle, picking up a few things for dinner, when I spotted him across the store. He was with a group of friends, laughing and joking. When he saw me, his face shifted. For a second, he seemed to hesitate, unsure of whether or not to approach me. I put my shopping basket down and walked over to him. "Hey, Adam," I said, trying to keep my tone light, my voice steady. He looked at me briefly before turning his gaze back to his friends. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice distant. I stood there, unsure of what to say next. This wasn't like him. This wasn't the son I had raised. Adam had always been the one who would call me just to talk about his day, the one who would come over for Sunday dinners, the one who would sit down and laugh with me about anything and everything. But now, he was avoiding me, pushing me further away. "So, how's work? How's everything going?" I asked, trying to fill the silence. Adam shrugged, his attention clearly divided between me and his friends. "It's fine, Dad. Busy, you know." I could feel the distance between us growing. His words were polite, but there was no warmth, no connection in them. He wasn't interested in talking. He wasn't interested in me. I stood there for a moment longer, hoping for some kind of opening, some sign that he was willing to bridge the gap. But instead, Adam turned to his friends and said, "All right, I'll catch up with you guys later." And with that, he walked off, leaving me standing alone in the aisle, my heart sinking in my chest. It was like I didn't even exist to him anymore. I tried to call him again that evening, but once more, the phone went to voicemail. I left another message. "Adam, I don't know what's going on, but we need to talk. You've been distant, and I don't understand why. I'm your father, and I love you. Please, just let me know what's going on." But still, no response. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us grew unbearable. I tried to keep busy, tried to focus on other things, but his rejection was all I could think about. I felt like I was losing my son, like I had somehow failed him. I decided to confront him. I had to. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, wondering what I had done wrong. So, one afternoon, I showed up at his apartment. Adam answered the door, looking surprised but not exactly happy to see me. "What's up, Dad?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. "I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Can we sit down for a minute?" He hesitated, but then stepped aside to let me in. We sat on the couch, the silence between us thick and uncomfortable. "Adam, I don't know what's going on, but this has to stop," I said, my voice more shaky than I wanted it to be. "You've been avoiding me, pushing me away. I don't understand why. What did I do? Why won't you talk to me?" Adam sighed, looking down at his hands. "Dad, it's not that simple. I don't know what you want from me. You've always been so focused on your work, on what you do. But now, it's like you don't even know who I am. I've grown up. I'm not a kid anymore. I don't need you to tell me how to live my life." His words hit me like a slap. I had always prided myself on being there for him, on being the guiding hand when he needed it. But now, he was telling me that I was a burden, that I had somehow become irrelevant to him. I'm your father, Adam. I love you. But if you're telling me you don't need me, then I don't know what else to say, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. Adam looked away, his face hardening. You just don't get it, do you? You've always been the one who expected me to be what you wanted. But I'm not you, Dad. I've got my own life now, and I don't need you to control everything. His words stung more than I could have imagined. He was right in some ways. I had been too focused on what I thought was best for him, on what I wanted him to be, instead of letting him grow into his own person. But hearing it from him, hearing it so plainly, so coldly, it was like a knife in my heart. I'm sorry, Adam, I said quietly. I didn't mean to control you. I just wanted the best for you. But I see now that I've failed. I've failed to be the father you needed. Adam didn't say anything. He just stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. I think you should leave now, Dad. And with that, the door was closed between us. I stood outside, my heart shattered, wondering if I would ever see my son the same way again. After the confrontation, the silence between Adam and I was deafening, but deep down, I knew I had to find a way to heal the rift. The days after that conversation felt like an eternity. I spent most of my time sitting alone in my house, thinking about what had been said. Linda noticed the change in me, how I became withdrawn, how my once bright energy faded into a dull, quiet routine. I didn't want to burden her with my feelings, so I kept quiet about everything, but I could tell she knew something was wrong. She always did. It was hard to focus on anything else. Work, that was long gone. My entire identity had been tied up in that job, and now, it was like a part of me had disappeared along with it. My life had been appended, and now, it felt like my relationship with Adam was being ripped apart too. I thought about the years I had spent raising him. I thought about the long nights I stayed up helping him with homework, the weekends we spent watching sports, the father-son talks we had when he was struggling with his own life choices. I had always tried to be there for him, but now, in his eyes, I was just a failure man who couldn't adapt, a burden on his life. What hurt the most wasn't just his words, it was the sudden realization that, maybe, I hadn't been the father I thought I had been. I had always been so focused on providing, on giving him everything he needed materially, that I didn't stop to think about whether I was meeting his emotional needs. Had I really been there for him in the ways that mattered most, or had I been too busy chasing work, too consumed by what I thought was important? A few days after the confrontation, Linda sat down beside me on the couch. She put her hand on mine, her touch gentle but firm. You need to talk to him, John, she said softly. I know you're hurt, but you can't let this fester. If you want to fix things, you have to try. I looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. I knew she was right. I couldn't keep letting this go. But what was I supposed to say? How could I fix a relationship when I didn't even know where I went wrong? I don't know what to say to him. Linda, I admitted, my voice shaky. I don't know how to make this right. He's rejecting me, and I don't know how to get through to him anymore. Linda looked at me with those eyes that had seen me at my best and at my worst. The woman who had been by my side through thick and thin. You start by being honest with him. Tell him how you feel. Let him know that you've made mistakes, but that you love him, that you're still his father, no matter what. It wasn't an easy thing to hear. I had always prided myself on being strong, on being the provider, the protector. But now, I was being asked to be vulnerable, something I wasn't used to. It scared me. The thought of opening up to Adam, of showing him the raw pain I was feeling, made my stomach turn. But I knew that Linda was right. If I didn't try, I would lose him for good. And the thought of losing my son, that was something I couldn't live with. The next day, I decided to reach out again. I didn't want to send another message or leave another voicemail. I needed to see him face to face, even if it meant facing his rejection again. I drove to his apartment, not really knowing what I was going to say or how it would go, but I had to try. When I arrived, Adam wasn't home. His car was parked in the driveway, but the apartment door was locked. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Before I decided to leave a note, I scribbled down my feelings, how much I loved him, how sorry I was for not being the father he needed, and how I wished he would talk to me. I placed the note under his door and walked away, feeling both hopeful and defeated at the same time. I didn't expect a response, but a few hours later, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway, wondering if this was the moment I had been waiting for. Dad. It was Adam's voice. Adam, I said, my heart racing. I'm glad you called. There was a pause on the other end, as if he was deciding what to say. I read your note. I didn't know what to think at first, but I think we need to talk. A wave of relief washed over me. This was the first step, the first crack in the wall between us. I was finally going to have the conversation I'd been longing for. I've been thinking a lot, Dad, Adam continued, and I don't want things to be like this. I know I've been distant, but I've been struggling with a lot of things. It's not just about you losing your job, it's about everything, really. I didn't know how to say it before. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the uncertainty that mirrored my own feelings. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what. I wanted to tell him that I understood, that I was willing to listen. But the words caught in my throat. Let's meet, I said finally. Can we talk? In person? Adam agreed, and we set a time to meet the next afternoon. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if we were going to resolve anything, or if this would be another painful conversation, but at least it was a step in the right direction. For the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a chance to heal the wound that had opened between us. I was nervous as I waited for Adam to arrive, unsure of what we would say to each other, but deep down, I knew this was our last chance to rebuild what we had. The next day, I arrived at the small cafe we had agreed to meet at. It was a quiet place, not too crowded, with soft music playing in the background and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. I sat at a table by the window, nervously tapping my fingers on the table as I waited for Adam to show up. I hadn't seen him in over a week, and the time apart had felt like an eternity. I knew that this was the moment either we would make some progress, or the distance between us would grow even further. A part of me dreaded this meeting. Adam's words still echoed in my mind, his harsh rejection of me, and I wasn't sure how much further he would push me away. But another part of me felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find some common ground. Maybe this wasn't the end of our relationship. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I saw him walk through the door. Adam had always been tall, with a slight slouch in his shoulders, a result of years of focusing too much on schoolwork and not enough on posture. He was wearing a simple black jacket and jeans, looking every bit the grown man he had become. When his eyes met mine, I saw something there, perhaps, but also a kind of weariness, as though he was tired of the tension between us two. "Hey Dad," he said softly, his voice lacking the coldness I had come to expect over the last week. "Hey, Adam," I replied, standing up to shake his hand. It felt awkward, like we were strangers, but at least he was here. That was something. We sat down, and for a few moments, there was only the quiet hum of the cafe around us. Neither of us knew where to start, or what to say. I had been preparing for this conversation in my head for days, but now that we were here, the words seemed to escape me. Adam spoke first, breaking the silence. "I've been thinking a lot, Dad, about everything, and I realize now that I haven't been fair to you." His admission took me by surprise. I hadn't expected him to start the conversation with an apology, but here it was. My heart caught in my throat, and I looked at him, trying to read his face. "I've been upset," Adam continued, his eyes downcast, "not just because of everything going on with the job, but with other things too. I don't know if you ever really understood what I was going through, but I felt like you didn't see me for who I was. You always wanted me to be something I wasn't." I sat there, listening intently, trying to process his words. "I don't know what you mean, Adam," I said quietly. "I've always tried to support you. I've always tried to do what was best for you. What didn't I see?"
Adam ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "You always focused on providing, on working hard. You were always about the job, the money, the stability. But I needed you, Dad. I needed you to understand me, to see me for who I am, not just as someone who would eventually take over the family responsibilities." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. "I didn't realize I was doing that," I said softly, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me. "I thought I was doing what was right. I thought providing for you, for your future, was the most important thing." "I know you did," Adam replied, his voice softer now. "But that's not what I needed. I needed you to listen, to really listen. I needed to feel like I mattered to you, not just as your son, but as a person." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. I hadn't realized how much my focus on work had blinded me to his emotional needs. I had thought that by providing for him, by giving him the things I never had, I was being a good father. But in doing so, I had failed to see the deeper emotional distance growing between us. I'm sorry. Adam, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I thought if I worked hard enough, you'd understand how much I love you, how much I wanted to give you everything. But I see now that I missed the mark. Adam looked up at me then, his expression softer, though still tinged with the remnants of frustration. It's not just about that, Dad. It's about how I felt growing up. I felt like you were always busy, always preoccupied with the next job, the next project. I couldn't talk to you about my own struggles, my own issues. You were always so focused on what was next that I didn't know how to ask for your help. I closed my eyes, feeling the sting of regret. I had been so caught up in providing for my family, in ensuring their future, that I had failed to realize how much I had neglected the present. I had neglected my son, emotionally, and that hurt more than I ever imagined it would. I'm sorry, Adam. I should have been there for you more. I should have listened. I don't know how I can make it up to you, but I want to try. I want to be the father you need, not just the one I thought you needed. There was a long pause as Adam took in my words. Finally, he nodded slowly. I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight, Dad. It's going to take time. But I think we can start over. Maybe we can learn how to communicate better. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, but it was a start. And after everything that had happened, I was willing to take that first step. I'd like that, I said, my voice more hopeful than I had felt in a long time. As Adam and I began to talk more openly, it became clear that rebuilding our relationship would take time. But I was determined to try, no matter how hard it would be. The conversation we had at the cafe wasn't a perfect resolution. It wasn't like the floodgates opened and all the pain and misunderstanding washed away in an instant. But it was a start. It felt like the first real step toward mending the broken pieces of our relationship. And that was more than I had hoped for after everything that had happened. Adam and I began talking more often, albeit in small steps. It wasn't as if we suddenly became best friends or that everything was magically fixed. But we made an effort. And for me, that was enough. I had spent so much of my life trying to provide for him, to make him proud, that I hadn't realized how little I had actually listened to him. Now, I was determined to change that, even if it meant admitting my mistakes and showing him the vulnerability I had hidden for years. We started with the simple things. We'd go for coffee together once a week and talk about everything and nothing at all. We talked about his job, about his friends, and eventually about his life. I listened more than I spoke, trying to give him the space he needed to express himself. I didn't offer advice unless he asked for it. I just let him talk. But the more we talked, the more I realized how much we had drifted apart. I had been so focused on what I thought was best for him, pushing him to be successful, to take on responsibilities, that I hadn't realized how much he had changed. He wasn't the same boy I raised. He had grown into a man with his own thoughts, dreams, and disappointments. And though that should have made me proud, it also made me realize that I had missed the subtle changes in him, the quiet shifts in who he had become. We sat together one afternoon at the same cafe where we had had our first real conversation. I noticed that he seemed more relaxed than usual, but there was still something guarded in his expression. Dad, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Adam began, taking a sip of his coffee, about how you weren't there for me the way I needed you to be. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. Adam, I can't change the past, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I've been so focused on doing things the way I thought was right that I forgot to just be there for you. He nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. I understand that now. But it's not just about the past. It's about what happens next. What do you mean? I asked, not sure where he was going with this. Adam leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face. I mean, we can't just pretend that everything's fine. We can't just pick up where we left off. We've both changed, and it's going to take time to get to know each other again. His words struck me, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. I had hoped that with a few conversations, we could find our way back to the bond we once had. But Adam was right. Time had changed us both. The father and son we had been were no longer the same. We couldn't just rewind the clock and pretend nothing had happened. I understand, Adam, I said quietly. I know we can't go back to how things were, but I'm willing to try if you are. I want to build something new, something that's real. Adam's gaze softened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the flicker of the sun I had known in his eyes. I think I'm ready for that too, Dad. I don't expect everything to be perfect, but maybe we can figure it out together. We sat there for a while longer, just talking about everyday things. And though the conversation wasn't perfect, it felt like we had taken another step forward. Maybe we weren't the same people we had been years ago, but we were still family. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. Over the next few months, Adam and I continued to meet up regularly. Things weren't easy, and there were still awkward silences, moments where I caught myself slipping back into old patterns. But each time we met, we got a little bit closer to understanding each other. And each time, I had to remind myself that rebuilding trust takes time. We couldn't just rush this process, no matter how much I wanted everything to go back to normal. But there was still something weighing on me, something I wasn't ready to face. The truth was, I had a deep fear. It wasn't just about losing my job or not being able to provide for my family anymore. That fear had shifted. Now, my biggest fear was losing Adam completely. The thought of him pulling away again, of him no longer needing me in his life, felt like a constant ache in my chest. As much as I wanted to be there for him, I realized that I had to let go of my need to control things. Adam was an adult now, and he had his own life. It wasn't just about me being a father in the way I had always known. It was about me accepting that he had grown into someone I didn't always understand, and I had to make peace with that. I had to trust that, no matter what, he would be okay. One afternoon, we were sitting on my porch, having a beer together, when Adam spoke up. Dad, I've been thinking a lot lately, he said, his eyes on the horizon. What about? I asked, my voice tinged with curiosity. I'm thinking of moving out of the city, he said, his words slow and deliberate. I've been looking at a few places up north. It's a big change, but I think it might be good for me. I felt my stomach drop. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had always known that Adam would eventually move out, start his own life. But now, hearing the words out loud, it felt like a punch to the gut. You're really thinking of leaving? I asked, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. Adam nodded. Yeah, I think it's time. I've been looking for a fresh start, and I think I need to do it on my own. I wasn't surprised by his decision, but I was still hurt. I had spent so many years hoping that Adam would stay close, that he would always need me. And now, the reality was setting in. He didn't need me in the same way anymore. He was moving on with his life, and as much as I had wanted to hold on, I knew it was time to let go. That's a big step, I said, my voice thick. But if that's what you think is best, I support you, Adam. I always will. Adam smiled, and there was a flicker of something appreciation, maybe behind his eyes. Thanks, Dad. I know it's hard, but I think it's the right move. We'll always be family, okay? I nodded, though it was hard to hide the sadness in my heart. Letting go wasn't easy, but I knew it was something I had to do if I wanted to give Adam the space to grow. It was time for me to let go of the fear, to trust that he would be okay, even if he was no longer right by my side. Adam was leaving. The realization hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't just about his physical move. It was about the space that had grown between us over the years. And now, it felt like that gap was impossible to bridge. Adam had told me about his decision to move north a few days ago, and even now, the words echoed in my mind. It wasn't a complete surprise. I knew he was thinking about it, but hearing him actually say it out loud made it all too real. I had spent so many years holding on to the belief that he would always be near, that my son would always be a part of my everyday life, just as he had been when he was younger. But now, as the reality of his departure set in, it was like a cold wave washing over me. I sat in the same chair I had sat in 1,000 times before, the chair by the window, where I had spent hours watching the seasons change, thinking about the future. Now, the future seemed so uncertain. Adam was leaving to start his life on his own terms, and I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of pride and sorrow. I was proud of him for making his own decisions, for stepping out into the world on his own. But I was also grieving the loss of the relationship we had. He was moving on, and I was left behind. It wasn't just about the physical space that was being created. It was the emotional distance that had grown between us over the years, a distance I hadn't fully recognized until now. Adam had changed, and in many ways. So had I. I had spent so much of my life focused on the tangible things, work, money, stability, that I had missed out on the things that really mattered. Being present for my son, listening to him, understanding him. And now, I was paying the price for that neglect. Linda noticed the shift in me. We had always been able to communicate, to share our feelings, but this time, I found it harder to talk about what I was going through. I wanted to hide it from her, to protect her from my own pain, but she wasn't blind. She could see what was happening. "John, we need to talk," she said one evening, her voice gentle but insistent. "I know this isn't easy for you, but you've got to talk to Adam. You've got to let him go, even if it hurts." I looked at her, my wife, the woman who had stood by my side through every difficult moment of my life. She was the one who had seen me through my job loss, who had helped me pick up the pieces when I felt like I was falling apart. But this was different. This wasn't something I could fix with hard work or dedication. This wasn't something I could provide or solve. This was about letting go of my son, about accepting that the bond we once had changed. "I don't know how to do that, Linda," I said quietly. "I feel like I've lost him. He's moving away, and I don't know if he even wants me in his life anymore. He's pushing me away, and I can't just pretend like everything's fine." Linda sat down next to me, taking my hand in hers. "You've been his father his whole life, John, and no matter how far he goes, no matter what happens, he will always be your son. But you have to trust that he's making the right decision for himself. He's not rejecting you. He's growing up, finding his own way, and you need to allow him that freedom, even if it's hard." Her words hit me hard. I knew she was right. I had spent so much time trying to control things, trying to shape Adam's future, that I hadn't given him the space he needed to grow into the person he was meant to be. And now, it was time for me to let go. The next day, I called Adam. It felt strange, but I knew it was something I had to do. I needed to talk to him, to say the things I hadn't been able to say before. "Adam, can we meet?" I asked, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "I want to talk." He agreed, and we decided to meet at the park near his apartment. It wasn't the most private place, but it felt like the right spot. A place where we had spent time together when he was younger, throwing a ball around, walking around the lake, talking about life. It felt symbolic in a way, like a place where we could reconnect, even if just for a moment. When I arrived at the park, Adam was already there, sitting on a bench by the lake. He looked different, more mature in a way, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. He had grown up so fast, and I had missed so much of it. I sat down next to him, and for a long while, neither of us said anything. We just sat there in silence, watching the water ripple in the breeze. It felt like we were both waiting for the other to say something, but neither of us knew how to start. Finally, Adam spoke. "Dad, I know you're hurt by all this. I can see it. I didn't mean to make you feel like I was rejecting you." I looked at him, my chest tight. "I don't feel rejected, Adam. I just feel like I missed so much. I've spent so much of my life focused on other things, and now I'm trying to understand who you are, what you need, but I don't know how to fix it." Adam looked at me, his expression softening. "You don't need to fix anything, Dad. I've had to figure out who I am on my own. It wasn't about you not being there. It was about me figuring out my place in the world. And I know you've always done your best. I never doubted that." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "I just wish I had known sooner, Adam. I wish I had listened to you more. I'm sorry for not being there the way you needed." Adam nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know, Dad. I know you're sorry. And I know it's not easy. But I think we're both learning how to be who we need to be. I'm still your son, and I'll always be here for you. But I need to do this for myself, for my own future." It wasn't the perfect resolution I had hoped for, but it was something. A start, a chance to rebuild. I wasn't losing my son. I was giving him the freedom to grow. And as hard as that was to accept, it was what he needed, and what I needed too. I put my arm around his shoulders, something I hadn't done in years, but it felt right in that moment. "I love you, Adam. Always will." "I love you too, Dad," he said quietly. "And I always will." We sat there for a while longer, just being in each other's presence. There was a lot left unsaid, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we had made some kind of progress. Adam was moving away, but that didn't mean he was leaving me behind, that it was time to let go. Not just physically, but emotionally. I had to accept that Adam was his own person now, and that was something I couldn't control. But in the end, I had done my best, and that had to be enough that the days that followed Adam's move felt oddly empty. The house, which had once been filled with the noise of daily life, was now quiet. There were no more last-minute requests for help with his car, no more late-night talks about his job or his friends. The silence in the house wasn't just about the absence of his voice. It was about the absence of the father-son dynamic that had defined so much of my life. I tried to keep myself busy. Linda and I spent more time together, though it wasn't the same. We had our routines, of course, but there was a gap in the house, a hole in the day-to-day that was impossible to ignore. We had always been a team, raising Adam together, and now, with him gone, it felt like we were living in a different world. Linda was wonderful, as always, but even she knew something was missing. "John, I think you need to find something for yourself," she said one evening after dinner, noticing how I spent my time aimlessly around the house. "You can't keep sitting here waiting for things to go back to normal. This is the new normal." Her words stung a little, but I knew she was right. I had spent so many years being defined by my role as a father, as a provider, that I had lost sight of who I was outside of that. My job was gone, and now Adam had moved out. It felt like the very foundation of my life had shifted, and I was struggling to find my footing. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, looking at her from across the table. "I mean, you need to think about what makes you happy. John, what do you want to do now? You've always put others first now. It's time to put yourself first." It wasn't easy to hear, but I knew she was right. I had always been so focused on taking care of everyone else that I had neglected my own needs. Now, with all the changes, I had to figure out who I was when I wasn't Dad or the provider. I had no idea where to start. But I had to start somewhere. The next few days, I decided to take small steps. I went to the local community center and signed up for a few classes, something I'd never had time for before. I joined a woodworking group, something I had always wanted to try. I used to love making things when I was younger, and maybe rediscovering that old passion could help me reconnect with myself. It was awkward at first. I hadn't done anything like that in years, and being around people who didn't know me made me feel out of place. But as the weeks went by, I started to enjoy it. I began making small furniture pieces, bookshelves, chairs, tables, and with each piece I completed, I felt a little more like myself again. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it was something. And that something was the first step toward rebuilding my identity. I began to realize that I had spent so much of my life in the background, supporting others, that I had forgotten what it felt like to focus on my own growth. One day, Adam called me. It had been a couple of weeks since we had last spoken, and I had started to worry that the distance between us was growing again. But when I saw his name on the caller ID, I felt a rush of relief. "Hey, Dad," Adam said on the other end of the line. "I've been meaning to call. How's everything going?" "Hey, Adam, things are okay. I've been keeping busy." I smiled, realizing that it wasn't just the work I had been doing. It was the emotional work, too. I've been trying out some new things, trying to figure out what's next for me. "That's good to hear, Dad," he said, his voice genuine. "I know it must be tough. I'm sorry for how I acted before. I didn't mean to make you feel like I was rejecting you." Hearing him say that meant more than I could explain. I knew that it wasn't easy for Adam to admit his part in our estrangement, but it showed me that he was willing to meet me halfway. The healing wasn't going to be quick, but I was starting to see the signs that we were both working on it. "I'm proud of you, Adam," I said, my voice thick. "I'm proud of the man you've become. And I'm sorry, too, for not being there when you needed me." Adam paused, and for a moment I thought he might say something, but then he simply responded, "It's okay, Dad. We both made mistakes. But we're figuring it out now, right?" "Yeah," I said, smiling through the tears that had started to well up. "We are." We talked for a while longer, and as the conversation wrapped up, Adam said, "I'm coming to visit this weekend. I thought maybe we could catch up properly. I miss you, Dad." I felt a rush of warmth spread through me. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step forward. It was proof that we were rebuilding slowly, but surely. When Adam came to visit, it was the first time we had spent time together in months. It wasn't the same as it had been, but it was a start. Adam's visit wasn't a grand affair. He didn't come with big promises or expectations. He simply came ready to spend time with me, to catch up on everything we had missed. It was a quiet Saturday morning when he arrived, walking into the house with a smile on his face and a bag slung over his shoulder. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice light, as if nothing had changed. "How's everything?" "Good, good," I replied, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. We had both come so far, and though the road ahead would still have bumps, this moment felt like the beginning of something better. We spent the day together, doing simple things, watching a game on TV, talking about his new life up north, and just enjoying each other's company. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, still some things left unsaid. But there was also a sense of comfort in the air, a reassurance that we could be in each other's lives again without all the past baggage. In the evening, we sat down to dinner, just the two of us. Linda was out with some friends, giving us the space we needed to talk without interruption. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were father and son again, I've been thinking about everything, Dad, Adam said between bites of food. And I don't want you to think that I don't appreciate everything you did for me. I just needed to find my own way. I know, Adam, I replied, my voice quiet. I understand now. And I'm proud of you for doing that. I've learned a lot too. And I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what. He smiled at me, and in that smile, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, a sense of connection, of shared understanding. It wasn't all healed yet, but it was a start. And for the first time in months, I felt hopeful about the future, as Adam and I sat together. I realized that healing wasn't a single moment. It was a process, a journey that neither of us could rush. But for the first time in years, I felt like we were finally heading in the right direction. Adam's visit had been a quiet revelation. It wasn't just the simple fact that he had come over to spend time with me. It was the weight of everything we had been through, everything that had been left unsaid between us. In some ways, it felt like nothing had changed, and in other ways, it felt like everything had shifted. The awkwardness was still there, lingering in the background, but so was the understanding, the deep sense that we were both trying. And that was more than I had expected when he first moved out. That evening, as we sat at the dinner table, there was a shift in the air, something unspoken but undeniable. I knew we still had so much more to work through, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that we might make it. After dinner, we sat in the living room, the familiar hum of the house around us. But this time, it felt different. The silence between us wasn't filled with tension or resentment. It was simply comfortable, like the kind of quiet you share with someone you've known your whole life. I didn't have to say anything to Adam to know that he felt the same. He had always been the one to bring a sense of life into a room, and tonight, he was here, really here, without the walls that had been between us for so long. Dad, Adam said after a long pause, his voice softer than usual, I know I've been distant for a while, and I know you've been hurt, but I want you to know that I'm trying. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I want to figure this out. I don't want to lose you. The words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just an apology, it was a promise. And that promise meant more than I could express. For so long, I had carried the weight of feeling like I had failed him as a father, like I had lost him. And yet, here he was, acknowledging his part in all of this, showing a willingness to work through the things that had divided us. I don't want to lose you either. Adam, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. I've spent so much of my life trying to hold on to you, trying to guide you, but I never stopped to see what you needed. I've made mistakes, and I'm sorry. But I'm here now, and I want to do whatever it takes to rebuild. Adam nodded, his gaze steady. I know you didn't always know how to be there for me, Dad, but I've realized that I've been so focused on my own frustrations that I never stopped to really hear you. You've been a good father, but now I think we need to figure out what our relationship looks like moving forward. His words were a balm to the years of doubt I had carried in my heart. Adam didn't expect me to be perfect. He didn't expect me to erase the past. He just wanted to move forward together. That was all I had ever hoped for. And for the first time, I felt a sense of peace. We'll figure it out, I said, finally allowing myself to believe it. I'm not going anywhere. And I know I can't fix everything in one conversation, but I'll be here whenever you need me. Adam smiled, a quiet but genuine smile that softened the lines on his face. I know. I think we just need time. We've both got a lot to learn, but I'm willing to put in the effort. And I hope you are too. I am, I said, my voice filled with resolve. I'm ready. The rest of the evening passed quietly. We watched a movie together, the kind of light-hearted comedy we had always enjoyed when he was younger. It wasn't about discussing the past anymore. It was about enjoying each other's company and allowing the space for healing. There were still so many things unsaid, so much more that we would need to address in the coming weeks. But that night, it didn't feel like we were trapped in the same old patterns. We were moving forward, even if it was just a small step. The struggles that followed, the next few months, were far from easy. Healing doesn't happen overnight, and there were moments when old habits crept back in. There were times when I felt like I was slipping back into the same patterns, feeling like I needed to fix everything, to control everything. But Adam and I were working on it, and each time I felt myself pulling away, I reminded myself of the promise we had made to each other. It wasn't about fixing everything in one go. It was about trying, about being present, about learning to be father and son again. Adam's life continued to evolve. He was adjusting to his new city, his new job, his new sense of independence. It was hard not to feel left behind at times. I missed having him around. I missed being involved in his life the way I once was. But I also understood that this was part of him growing up, part of him finding his own way. He visited more often than I expected, though. He would come for dinner every few weeks, and we'd spend time together, catching up on his life and mine. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And each visit brought us a little closer to the father-son bond we had once had. Linda and I also started to reconnect in ways we hadn't for a long time. With Adam not around as much, we had the space to focus on ourselves. I had become so consumed with trying to fix my relationship with Adam that I had forgotten to nurture the one with Linda. But now, we made time for each other again. We went on walks, had dinner dates, and talked more openly about our hopes and fears. I had always considered Linda my partner in everything, but I realized that over the years, we had fallen into a routine where we had forgotten how to truly connect. That was something I wanted to change as well. Final author's note. This story isn't just about the reconciliation between a father and his son. It's about the hard truth that relationships are messy, that they require work, and that they can't be rushed. Sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to let go of control and allow the people we love the space they need to grow. But in doing so, we often find that the love we thought we were losing was always there, just waiting to be rediscovered.